It almost feels like training camp because we just got back from the NovaCare complex. We're doing a podcast. Does it feel like training camp yet?
No.
Yeah, it doesn't. We were just over there for a few press conferences. No practice for us, at least, but it won't be long.
Yeah, you could see him through the arborvitae, through the 600 arborvitae that circle the practice fields.
Yeah, I might have driven by slower than normal. Take a little peek.
You have 10 observations from practice?
I spotted Marcus Mariota.
Did you really?
I did. I saw red 8. That's all I got. He's the only person I saw. Maybe he was out there by himself.
How did he look?
Championship ready.
Yeah, he's ready to go. So there you have it. You have 9 more, and you'll have a post ready.
Yeah, I think 12 wins I saw from today's peeking through the bushes.
Yeah, so they're out there in shorts and running around. So we're not allowed out there. But if you drive really slow, you can
you can see a little bit.
Pick up some things through the bushes.
All right, this is the Eagle Eye Podcast. He's Reuben Frank. I'm Dave Zangaro. That's the end of our portion of this podcast where we pretend like we saw practice. It won't be long though. It is exciting. Like when we're starting to get closer. OTAs are just around the corner.
But you know what? If we could get on the roof of our building, I'll bet we could see practice. Get some binoculars.
It's pretty far.
There, bring up, but with good binoculars.
Telescope.
I don't think you need a telescope. Some high-powered binoculars. Get a couple lounge chairs up there. Some lemonade.
Don't give me any ideas. I'll do it right now.
Well, they're done
tomorrow.
You will too.
May 30th is the first day of OTAs. And OTAs at this point aren't even like, it's all kind of OTAs. The Eagles are going real late. I think they have 6 practices this spring. No mandatory minicamp. And you can get on them for it until you remember they did it last year and went to the Super Bowl. So
it works.
It seems to work, or at least it didn't hinder.
Fair.
Yeah. We have some stuff to talk about today. My latest 53-man roster projection is out. So we'll go through the entire roster position by position, and we'll try to figure out at least the lay of the land. We're not going to nail it quite yet, but we'll get a sense of what this roster looks like. But the first thing, we were just at the NovaCare complex. We talked to 3 players and 1 coach. So the players we talked to, James Bradberry, Dallas Goedert, Jason Kelce, and the coach, a good one. And AJ Brown, 4 players. He was the last one, so he's on the next part of my list. And Alex Tanney, the quarterback's coach.
Yeah, it was good, and it was the first time we've talked to Alex since his promotion. Really, I don't know if we talked to him before his promotion. And we can get to that, and it's good. I'll tell you what. Look, we're sitting here in May, and these guys are running around in shorts, but it's you kind of get a good sense of what the team is feeling. Dallas Goedert was pretty open about how losing the Super Bowl really, it really can affect you. It can play with your mind. You can. I think AJ Brown used he said, at some point you have to get up off the mat and get back to work. And that's kind of how you deal with it. And Dallas said, it's the day after that game, I was ready to get back to work. That's how he said it was the hardest loss he's ever had in his life. Obviously, you lose a Super Bowl, and I think this is going to be a kind of a theme for the season is how that loss drives you, how it motivates you, how you respond to it. And we all know that the record of teams that lose the Super Bowl is not good the next year. And there's a reason for that. It's not an easy thing to recover from. And, he talked about the whole team has a chip on its shoulder. It's nothing we talk about, but it's something you can sense in the locker room, in the weight room, on the practice field. Everybody's just really hungry and really, really driven right now. So that's what you want to hear. But I'm sure most teams that lose the Super Bowl feel the same way in May. So it's going to be a theme as we go from here into the season.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's going to be a storyline with this team throughout the year, and the presence of knowing what other teams have done, losing a Super Bowl. There's a reason for that. It's the physical and mental toll it takes, and they're in a really good spot, roster wise, and you feel good about where this team is. But yeah, I think that is in the back of your mind is these guys have been through a lot, and I think the way I look at it is you want to be on the top of that mountain, and it pushes you to want to be there, but it's Nick's job to make them remember the steps to getting there. And that's the hard part. You can't skip steps. you're in OTAs. You got to be in OTAs, and then you got to go to training camp, put in the work there, and then you have to take it game by game. Where all you want to do is fast forward and get to the playoffs, but you just can't do it that way.
Yeah, and I think that's where you mentioned the physical and the mental. I think that's where the mental really comes into play, because it's like if you climb a mountain and you're like, you can see the peak and you're 200 feet from summiting that thing, and you've got one last and you slide all the way down to the bottom. Like, you're not gonna be like, oh, okay, let me just climb this thing again. I mean, I think mentally it's gonna be like, oh, I gotta get all the way back up to. So I think it really is very tough mentally to overcome losing a Super Bowl and being that close. And for them, I mean, they were so close. I mean, they're up 10 at halftime. You don't need me to go through how close they were, but we all know.
Let me run that game down again for the fans.
Yeah, if you missed the game, if you were out that day. And just to kind of have it, I mean, this wasn't like a 51-10, this was had it in their grasp.
In a way that makes it a lot tougher.
I think so. They had it and they gave it away. Kind of like the Sixers in Game 6. But I don't want to talk about the Sixers either.
Man, if you like this podcast, you're just a glutton for punishment. Bring up all the bad things that have happened in your life.
Yeah. After this, we'll talk about the Phillies defense.
Yeah. Did you get divorced? We'll bring that up on the next podcast.
But I think mentally it's very, very tough. And I think there's a very mentally tough team. We know they're talented. If any team can bounce back, and it makes you appreciate, and look, in 2017 they won the Super Bowl, but it makes you appreciate the 2018 season to have another good year and to win a playoff game and
overcome things going wrong.
Yeah.
Because things are going to go wrong this year.
Yeah.
It felt like nothing went wrong last year. That's not true. Things went wrong, but they were blessed with some really good luck. And especially injury luck. It's probably going to be a little different this year, just based on the averages of what happens in this league. They're going to have to overcome that stuff.
Yeah, you're right. And it was when things did go wrong, Quez was usually in the middle of it, whether it was Dallas or Washington or Kansas City. But that's not fair. I mean, other things went wrong too. I just can't think of any right now. But it's not going to go that easily. I mean, to start a Super Bowl with the same starters as you started the regular season opener it's unheard of. That's not going to happen. So there's going to be adversity, and it's how you deal with it. And I think this team's really well equipped to deal with it, but we will find out. And then you get to week 9, and all of a sudden you have Dallas, Kansas City, Buffalo, San Francisco, Dallas, Seattle sitting there waiting for you. It's not going to be an easy year. And I think these guys know that. And they know how important it is to follow the process.
Yeah, that was kind of the biggest overall takeaway from talking to these veterans who went through that. But I thought there were interesting things with each of them that we can kind of go through. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Bradberry, I mean, clean out day, he talked to us in the locker room. We all said, well, good luck, James. Whatever, thanks for the year. And it was nice talking to you and nice getting to know you. Good luck wherever you're going to be next year. It was one of those. We thought he was gone.
Yeah, I think he thought he was gone too. And I think I wrote that day, just kind of his thoughts on it. And, I mean, he was talking in the past tense. I had a great time here, and, it was a fun run. And he was certainly thinking on that day, and this is obviously, a few weeks before free agency, but in his mind, he was gone. And here he is.
Yeah, he's back, and he seems pretty happy about it. And it's him and Slay back for 3-year deals that are really 2-year deals. Running it back, 2 really good corners, both older, both over 30. And I think there's some risk involved in that for sure. When you look at the list of guys who played the cornerback position in their 30s last year, it's a short list. And there's a reason for that, but you feel pretty good about these 2 individuals.
Really short list.
Very short list, yeah. And Slay was one of them.
Yeah.
But you still feel good about these 2 individual players.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Slay's second half is a little red flag, but I still believe in the player, and I still think he's one of the better corners in the league. But he's also one of the older corners in the league. So I asked JB about coming back, because I said, I thought you're gone. And, he kind of smiled. He's like, yeah, I kind of thought I was gone too, but it worked out. And he gave a lot of credit to Howie for making it work out. And, he really likes it here. And I think he likes being a part of this. He was not on.
He likes the cafeteria.
He said he likes the food. He said, I'm a foodie. I like the caf.
You picture them in the cafeteria, like high-fiving each other. We did it.
It is good cafeteria. We're just not allowed in there anymore. We see there every day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's some pretty good food.
Their staff does a really good job.
Yeah, they do. They flat out get it done. Pro Football Focus had them as the number 4 cafeteria in the league.
Yeah, they got to check their analytics on that.
Yeah, I don't know. But for lunch, they were number 2. I'm making that up. It didn't really happen.
Oh, Pro Football Focus didn't rank cafeterias.
No, they didn't rank cafeterias. But just in case anybody's wondering out there, if you don't have a subscription, you might not know. If you're not paying your dues. But he played on a lot of bad teams. I think being on a good team meant a lot to him. And he and Slay became really close, which is funny because they're such opposites, polar opposites, personality wise, but they became really good friends. I think he likes playing with them, and they're so lucky he's back. Yeah,
it's nice to get him back. I thought it was really funny. He was asked if last year was his best season, and he said, "No, I think my 4th year in Carolina," which is true, but it's a level of honesty that I appreciate so much.
Yeah, he's nothing if not honest. But he said, I did have a good year last year. I did make All Pro. He talked about, the last play, and kind of how he coped with the end of the season, the end of that game. He's such a pro, and I think he said, I just surrounded myself with my family, and you move on. He said you have to move on, and you can't change what happened, and I think it's an obvious thing, but I think it's not an easy thing for some people, and a lot of pro athletes carry that stuff. I remember, man, I will never forget. Was it Scott Young? Was he the guy that jumped off sides in the 06 on 3rd down in the 06 playoff games in New Orleans? And he cost the Eagles. They were driving to try to win the game, and he cost them a 1st down. It was a really, really dubious false. It was a false start. It was a really dubious call. And he was a guy. He was only playing because Shawn Andrews had gotten hurt just before halftime. And I ran into him like a few years later. I don't know if it was at the NovaCare, and I asked him about that, and he said, it still haunts me. It haunts me to this day. And you think of these guys as being like superheroes and infallible, and I mean, stuff like that can really, Bill Buckner every day. I'm sure he's asked about Mookie Wilson's ground ball. It's, so for JB, I mean, to be called for a pivotal penalty and at the end of a Super Bowl, he talked about getting over that and moving on, and it takes a lot of mental toughness to do that. And said, new season, let's go.
Yeah, I want to give credit to 2 entities that have made it better for James Bradberry. One is James Bradberry. He was never in denial about it.
Right.
Got out in front of it, super accountable, said, this is what happened. Yeah, I held. The underlying text of that was that, yeah, everyone holds, and that's just what happens. But they called it, didn't love that they called it. They called it, is what it is. That helped. Honestly, the fan base, I think there were some people who blamed him, but I think this fan base just got it. Like, it was unfortunate, and I think there was a lot of anger to the officials, which fine, but I think there was a lot of that's unfortunate. I don't think a ton of people, and maybe this is, it's hard for me to get the full scope of it. I don't think a ton of people threw it all on James Bradberry.
I think you're right, and I think part of that was how accountable he was, and I think part of that was just the understanding that
smart fan base too. Honestly, this is not me pandering. I think the fans here got it. They didn't lose because of that one moment,
right? And the fact that that's not a penalty that was called that whole game, and they just want consistency from the refs, and they didn't get it. And so yeah, I mean, you could, in that game, there's a lot of people you could have blamed. I think the fans understood what happened.
Yeah, unfortunate for James that call did loom really large. And I think it was just, you know what? I think it was just an overwhelming sense of like we all got robbed of seeing that game not end because of a call, basically.
Yeah, there's no doubt. For me, and just on social media, I mean, most of the anger was toward the league for letting that game be played on that field.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
So, yeah.
Anything else from James Bradberry? He was asked about Juju Smith-Schuster. Handled that very diplomatically. Said he didn't care for some of that, but didn't want to get into that too much, which I understand.
He's a pro.
You can tell he did not like that.
Did not like it.
Yeah, which is fair.
Yeah,
which is
blame him.
Very fair, and they'll see Juju early this season.
Yes, they will.
Yeah. That's all I had from Bradberry. Anything else really stand out?
That's good.
Yeah. Dallas Goedert. Getting a chance to talk to him. He's sometimes he's like the forgotten guy of this offense. He's really good.
Yeah. Yeah, he's really good. He's well spoken. He's become one of the more, I guess, compelling interviews on the team. I mean, he's not going to make headlines, but he's honest, he's open, he answers questions, and he covered a lot of ground today. I thought he was good. He kind of talked about just how that game affected the team and what the mentality is going into the season. And I like the quote of, and I totally get it. Like, you would think guys after losing a Super Bowl would just want to get away from football, he's like, I was ready to play the next day. And he probably was. He would have gone out there and played the next day. There's some guys, Lane Johnson would have gone out and played that night.
Maybe not Lane.
Well, yeah, he was well, with enough meds maybe,
yeah.
but yeah, there's just certain guys, and you really admire them that just can't wait to play again. And I think if you have enough guys like that on the team, and I think they do, it just creates a positive response to a really devastating loss. And he said, we understand that we're starting out at 0-0 and we're starting over, and we have to put in the same steps, like you said, the same steps as far as work that we did last year to get where we were and have another opportunity. But we all want that, and we're all willing to put in the work. And it starts with Jalen. And when your leader and your quarterback is not taking any shortcuts and putting in the work, it makes everyone else want to do it. You talk to Dallas and you understand why, it makes you want to go out there and play. He's just.
Does it?
Yeah.
Not me. My hamstring's a little tight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be careful with that.
It's an annoying injury. Hamstrings are tough when you get older. They don't heal the way they used to. It's an old man with a 6-week injury.
Everything's harder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought one of the more fascinating things Goddard mentioned, I think it was an answer to my question, and then I followed up. It was like, at this point in your career, like, what do you work on? Because he's really good. He's one of the best tight ends in the league. So he went through a lot of the different things, but to me, the most fascinating one was working on his routes, specifically his releases, the tops of his routes. And he said he works with the Eagles receivers on that. So he'll spend time with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Greg Ward.
Mentioned Greg Ward.
He mentioned specifically. He said he started that last year, but I find that fascinating, just the cross-pollination of Eagles position groups.
Yeah, and then I think you asked A.J. about it as well, who was good talking about it. Yeah, I mean, it's you love to hear that. I don't know how common that is. I mean, you're talking about a tight end and a wide receiver. What could they, I mean, they both catch the ball, but they're completely different positions. But
they used to be.
Yeah. I mean, wherever you can pick something up, you do it. And teammates helping each other. And I think AJ talked about, we're all learning from each other. For veterans to do that, that's big.
And this team's pretty good about that.
Yeah.
In general, like we see Slay work with DBs and receivers quite a bit.
Right.
Yeah, we'll see that from time to time. I don't think it's completely unique. I don't want to make it sound like the Eagles have this big advantage. A lot of teams do it, but I think it's something that Sirianni really probably appreciates quite a bit.
Yeah, and he's not here anymore, but Miles Sanders talked last year.
I was like, Nick's not here anymore.
Miles Sanders would talk about how during breaks, like when they were in special teams, he would go over and watch the linemen just to kind of get an understanding of how Stout's coaching them and just what they're being taught. And that's it's kind of a holistic view of football. I mean, all 11 parts are connected some way. And the more you understand, and I think it goes for coaches too. And I think that's why you're comfortable promoting an Alex Tanney or not him so much as like just a Brian Johnson from quarterbacks to the whole offense. If the more you understand about what everyone else is doing, the better you can do your job.
Dallas Goedert's kind of reaching an interesting point in his career.
Yep.
5 seasons in, talent-wise, one of the best tight ends in the league, but he hasn't been able to put together that. I mean, you can say he's had a breakout season because the talent's there. And we've seen him be really good, but like he hasn't played a full season at that level. And it's like you just want to see him do it. You want to see him get to that point. You want to see him reach the Pro Bowl. You want to see him get 1,000-yard season because, like, talent-wise, he's there, but he's entering year 6 without a Pro Bowl. It's like shocking in a way that he hasn't gotten there.
Yeah, and he was on the way last year. I mean, to have 700 yards in 12 games. I mean, he was on pace for almost 1,100 yards last year. He averaged 58.5 per game. So, yeah, I'll do the math. But I think he'll get there. I think he's so focused on getting better. I think in the first few years he wasn't going to go just because Ertz was here. But you could see once Ertz was gone, even at the end of that year, just how he blossomed and just took ownership of that spot. I still think he's a top 5 tight end in the league.
I'd put him higher than that.
Well, top 5 includes 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I didn't say he's the 5th best. I say he's top 5 tight end. Okay. So,
I think he's a top 100 tight end because he could be the 3rd best in the league.
He might be, but he's got to play a season. I mean, look, everybody gets hurt. Obviously, I think we would agree on. Who would you put ahead of him, other than Kelce? Mark Andrews.
I wouldn't.
He's way better blocker than Mark Andrews.
That's the thing. It's like how do you? Kelce's just such a dynamic pass catcher that like I don't even care about blocking because he's so dangerous in that aspect. I mean, Andrews is really good, but he's not giving you what Goedert gives you in line. George
or down the field either.
Yeah, sure. George Kittle has the dual threat ability, but he's another guy who hasn't been able to stay healthy. So
Hawkinson is really good.
I'd take Goedert over Hawkinson.
Yeah, I probably would too. The dude in Pittsburgh, Freemuth, is good.
Freemuth, yeah.
I would take Goedert over him. And then you have the kid in Atlanta was hurt last year.
Pitts.
I think Kelce's the only guy. Evan Ingram, pretty good.
He's a receiver.
You don't get many who have the combination of blocking and receiving that Dallas gives you. It's true. Could be 1,000-yard receiver. He was on pace for 1,000 yards last year, and one of the better blocking tight ends in the league. So Kittle, is going to give you both. I'd probably put Kittle ahead of him. Kittle's a couple years older. You might go Kelce, Kittle, Goedert.
It's fair.
Yeah. Andrews catches a ton of balls, but he also gets targeted. I mean, he's like, especially when Lamar's not out there. I mean, he's like, he gets every target.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, his yards per target are way lower than Goedert. That's the thing about Goedert. His yards per target is off the charts. It's one of the highest in history since they started keeping that stat, highest in history by a tight end and higher than most receivers. He's so efficient.
Man, Kittle was 2nd-team All-Pro last year. That would have been Goedert's spot.
Goedert averaged 10.2 yards per target last year. The next highest by a regular tight end I mean, a guy with say 40 catches was Kittle at 8.9. He's a yard and a half higher. Yeah, if he can stay healthy, he'll be the second best tight end in the game.
Yeah, sure. And at some point, Kelce's going to take a step back. He's getting up there.
I don't know. He's 33, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Yeah, and Goedert's 27. And there's other guys who are going to come in the league, but he's a really, really good player. Probably one of the more underrated players on the team.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right. The other Kelce, Jason Kelce, podcast superstar Jason Kelce talked to us today. He graced us with his presence. It is weird that like he is bigger in media than us now.
Well, yeah, his podcast is ranked higher than ours, which drives me crazy.
Yeah, we give him an earful about that.
Yeah, but
really bumped us down the
I
board.
Watch his. It's really good.
Yeah, they're great. They have chemistry.
Yeah, they don't interject with track and field stats all the time, like some podcasts.
We should take notes.
Yeah, and he talked about and he kind of said the same thing he said at the Super Bowl about playing this year. I thought he was going to retire. You thought he was coming back. He talked about all his other interests and how he said, I want to make sure I have something to fall back on when I retire. So, I kind of doing the podcast and I did the broadcasting boot camp, and he says, the problem is I just keep playing. And Eagles are very lucky he does. I mean, they'll have an answer when he retires, but it's funny. Like he's such a personality now, but when he gets up in front of us, like there's nothing to ask him because he's done 20 podcasts since the Super Bowl.
That part of it is strange.
Yeah,
it's like we're just asking about stuff he's already talked about on his podcast.
Yeah. Like I was trying to ask him about, like, I remember his first pod after the Super Bowl and he was really down and, it must have been really, he said it was really hard for him to do it. And, I asked him if it was just kind of therapeutic to have that outlet. He just talked about what a weird week it was just because he was so happy for his mom getting the attention, Donna, that she got that week. And he was happy for his brother. And then like a few days later, he realized we just lost the Super Bowl. And then he started dwelling on what could I have done better? What could we have done better? Yeah, it's kind of weird. He's like, the guy's like a superstar, rock star, celebrity. He's a center. There's never been a guy like that. There's never been a center that's been a celebrity, has there? I mean,
not that I can think of. Not
really good centers.
Although this team did have a long snapper star. So
Dornbos became a star. I guess he
was still here when he was.
Yeah, but it wasn't like
he did America's Got Talent while he was still in the Eagles.
Was he doing that? Yeah, you're right. Interesting. Pro Football Reference thinks he's a center. They list him as a center, which is ridiculous.
Well, lines up in the same spot, kind of.
I guess. Anyway, there was nothing really from Kelce of note. It's always fun talking to him.
There was one. Just him. He's not that he hasn't been super complimentary of Cam Jurgens before, but again, just like he says, this guy could have played last year at center and he would have been fine. He could play center this year and he'd be fine. And he thinks he can play right guard.
I like how you asked him, you asked him about Jurgens and he didn't play we didn't get to see him last year. And he said, well, he played. And you're like, he played like 30 snaps.
What are you talking about, Jason?
Jason was like, well, he played 30 snaps.
Yeah.
31, whatever it was. But yeah.
It felt like I was doing a podcast with you. It's like, is this what maybe it's just me. Maybe that's why.
Maybe.
If Kelce did a podcast with me, he'd be like, no, Cam played 30 snaps.
Maybe it's you.
And he threw the shot put. Nice.
He did, actually. Yeah, he's always been bullish on him. And, I think for some guys would just say that anyway. I think Kelce would find a way if he wasn't really high on him.
To be polite about it.
He'd mute his praise a little bit.
I liked the way he described his strength, like strength per pound or per size.
Yeah.
Which is true because Cam's not like the biggest guy.
Right.
but that's okay. Like Kelce's not the biggest guy, and he's plenty strong. So
I think he said his strength per pound or per weight is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which it better be because he's not that big.
He's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
AJ Brown.
Yeah. It's good to see AJ.
He was one of the guys who, at least outwardly, took the loss in the Super Bowl the hardest.
Yeah.
So I was curious to see how he was going to respond to those questions.
Yeah, I think I asked him about it, and he talked about at some point you just have to get off the mat and get up and dust yourself off and get back to work. It's the only way to do it. And it's like you give yourself how much time you give yourself to be depressed about it or dwell on it or just kind of obsess with specific plays, because it's so easy to say, if I caught that ball, if I ran that route, if I whatever, it's natural to do it. I would do it. But at some point you just have to put it behind you. And I think the veterans understand that. And I think that's why something like these camps like this week is good. You kind of move on. You have new guys here. You have the new roster. And you start that process of moving on. But it was hard for him. And we saw that on social media because he's a guy that wears his heart on his sleeve.
Yeah.
And wears his heart on Twitter.
He was having some fun in free agency. He admitted he was trolling a little bit.
Yeah.
During free agency. He was like, remember, like there was a week where like I think it was when the Eagles thought they were going to lose Slay, and he was like asking people to rank their favorite fruits or something.
Yeah.
Listing fruits.
Yeah.
Going through all that. He has some fun on social media. Sometimes I think you're watching it going, I don't know if this is the best thing, but
yeah,
he always like walks it to the line and then walks it like.
And he said today, he even said, I hope everyone realizes I'm just joking. Yeah, sometimes you could interpret it a couple different ways, but yeah, he loves the action. He looked good. He looked big.
He always looks pretty big.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess.
He was in Florida for a little bit working out. That was one thing. Reminder, like these are all voluntary. It seems the Eagles get pretty good attendance, but everything in the spring is voluntary because they don't even have a mandatory camp. But I did pick up on the fact that he was away from the team, but he was still logging on through Zoom to a team meeting because that's how we found out he was listening to Brian Johnson. He was going, wait a second, who's that talking? And, yeah, it's your new offensive coordinator. But that's just a reminder. Like this is all voluntary. It's at least a good sign. They get good participation, and then you hear a guy like AJ Brown isn't there, but he's staying involved.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's another way you gauge just how hungry this group is to bounce back from February.
Yeah. Sometimes you got to pick out your sconces, and that's okay too.
I'll never forget that day.
It's that Kerry Williams reference if you didn't.
Yeah, they know. It wasn't just sconces. He also, his daughter had a dance recital. Yeah.
Hey, I get it.
Yeah.
Voluntary does not mean voluntary in the NFL, but if you read it, it says voluntary. And if you got enough years in the league, you got enough clout in the building, you can take advantage of that voluntary stuff.
Yeah, I'm not sure Kerry Williams had that yet.
He thought he did.
He thought he did. And the sconces probably wasn't a great example of why he was staying away.
Last guy, Alex Tanney, new quarterbacks coach, his first press conference in that type of setting, and won't be his last. He's someone who the organization thinks very highly of, and he seems like a pretty fast riser in the coaching ranks. A lot of responsibility on him now. Yeah,
very smooth. I mean, he was in the league for, 10 years?
Decade, yeah. And 9 years, I think.
9 years. Bounced around a lot of different teams, was around a lot of different coaches. What do you say, 12 offensive coordinators? Picked something up from each one, he said, and kind of came up with his own style. I think he talked about his relationship with Jalen and how strong it is, his understanding of what Jalen likes. And look, I think it's really good to have some continuity, maybe not in the position titles, but to have Brian Johnson and Alex Tanney who have been here and have relationships and understand how Nick runs practice, how he runs meetings, what's expected of the coaches, what's expected of the players. They're not new. They've been through that, and they can kind of pick up where they left off. That's a really important position. And I mean, obviously Brian Johnson did a tremendous job with Jalen. And now the ball's in Alex Tanny's court. I think he'll be okay. He's got everything you look for. And I think you asked the question, and it's so true about backup quarterbacks. I mean,
it's amazing.
Yeah. And backup quarterbacks on this team, whether it's Josh McCown or Mike Kafka, GJ Kinney, he's a head coach now. So many of them. Matt Nagy. They've had all these.
Doug Peterson.
Doug Peterson was a pretty good
I know
example.
Frank wasn't a quarterback here, but Frank Reich.
Sure. Yeah, it's like catchers in baseball. It's just the most cerebral guy in the team.
But it's always the backups.
Yeah, because they have so much time to kind of analyze and
I think that's what it is.
Dugout and
I think some of the great players struggle to coach players who aren't as good as them.
Yeah, the old Ted Williams thing.
Yeah.
Ted Williams is one of the worst managers in history. Because he didn't understand why nobody was hitting 406.
Hit the ball.
It's like, just hit 406 like I did. I think you just have so much time. Your emphasis is on learning. If you're a backup quarterback, it's all you do is learn and prepare. And he said, I think I asked him about when. He said a couple of years in, I knew this is what I wanted to do. He said something interesting. He was like, so I started dropping hints to all the coaches and older teammates who were going to become coaches, like, yeah, I'd like to go into this. And so he had already planted the seed when he did retire, and there was a job waiting for him. Again, Nick coached him in 12, and Shane coached him. So he knows these guys. He's known them a long time. They trust him, and they know how smart he is.
That reminds me of a scene from an old Hard Knocks. It might have been the Texans one, but there was this little slot receiver, and he walks, it's Final Cuts, or it's close to Final Cuts, and he walks in the coach's office. The first thing the coach says to him, "You ever thought about coaching?" And that's not a good sign. Things
it's like
are
that
not
scene in Bull Durham, right?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, there might be an opening in Bluefield. Might be an opening in Bluefield.
It's a rare Reuben Frank movie reference.
Great movie, great film. One of 3 I've watched.
Last one you saw.
Just saw in the theater just a year or 2 ago.
Catch all the sports action and more at Rivers Casino, Philadelphia. Whether it's the money line or the pass line, there's something for everyone in a great sports book. Rivers Casino, Philadelphia. Philly loves a winner. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Caught me yawning.
Oh, you're yawning during my read. I thought it was a lively read. I thought we were giving it. I don't know, maybe not. 53-man roster projection. You ready to go through this?
Let's do it.
I put this out last week. Nothing has changed except for the addition of Charleston Rambo, who we'll talk about when we get to the receiver spot. But quarterback, top 2, you feel really good about. Jalen Hurts, Marcus Mariota. My third
former teammate of Alex Tanny.
True. My third, I have Tanner McKee in there. They just used a draft pick on him, but Ian Book is still in the mix.
I'm going to go with Ian Book.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Why?
Just gut feeling. I just don't see Tanner McKee coming in and winning a roster spot.
Okay. Now, there is a possibility also that they could keep 2 quarterbacks.
Sure.
And save that roster spot.
Yeah.
Last year, they did keep Ian Book on the roster all year. They didn't have but they went into the 53 with 2 because they cut Reed Sinnett.
Right.
And then they claimed Ian Book and they kept him on the roster.
From the Saints, I think.
So I don't know. Possibility.
It could be 2. If there's 3, I'm going to go with Ian Book.
Interesting. I just think, and I guess we'll get a sense of this, like how they divvy up reps.
Yeah. Maybe it's just their track record lately they didn't draft Hackenberg and those guys, but he drafted Clayton Thorson.
Yeah.
They just don't have a great, Carson Strong, Clayton Thorson, Hackenberg, all those guys.
Okay.
Not that Ian Book is a superstar,
that's
but
the thing.
They liked him enough to keep him on the 53. So
yeah, I gave an edge to the draft pick, but
sure.
We'll see how that turns out.
Yeah.
Running back was pretty easy for me, honestly. I kept 4: DeAndre Swift, Rashad Penny, Kenny Gainwell, and Boston Scott. I leave out Trey Sermon and Kennedy Brooks, and Trey Sermon is every Eagles fan's favorite player. So that's a tough one.
Yeah, and I mean, he went from being, maybe he's going to be the third guy behind Gainwell in Boston to out of the picture. So I would agree with your 4.
Yeah, I mean, they could keep 5.
I doubt it.
That's a lot of running backs, and you probably only have 3 active on game day.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to imagine.
Even the 4 is like, they've kept 3 in the past, but I don't know who else you'd remove from it.
Yeah, I mean, assuming they're all healthy, I mean, Boston Scott would be it's hard to imagine them cutting Boston Scott, but
he'd be the one guy because he's a veteran. You would save like a smidge of cap room.
Yeah.
But you think you'd like to keep him around.
Yeah, you would think so.
Yeah. We agree on that.
Yeah.
Position receiver next. I kept 5. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Quez Watkins, Olamide Zaccheaus, Britton Covey. A few of the guys I left out: Tyree Cleveland, Greg Ward, Devin Allen, Joseph Ngata, Jaden Hazelwood. Should mention I did this before they signed Charleston Ringo, Rambo.
Keely Ringo.
Yeah, I was looking at Ringo on my list here. Charleston Rambo. I still wouldn't have him making the team, but he's an interesting guy.
Yeah, and I'm of the school that they're going to trade Quez and open up a spot for someone else, whether it's someone who's on the team now.
You keep going back and forth on that.
No, I don't.
Okay.
No, I've gone back and forth. No, I changed my mind on just kind of Quez and where he is. I just think he might be a guy that needs a fresh start, some new scenery.
What do you think you bring back? Late round pick?
Yeah.
Just a late round conditional?
Yeah.
Get some conditions
on.
But
I'm at the point where I'd be okay with him. I want to see him compete with Zaccheaus.
Yeah.
I'm really curious to see how he'll do in camp. But I do think there's a chance they'll trade him and keep, whether it's Rambo or someone else. Greg Ward, Allen, you know who I'm rooting for. Track guy. But I don't think Quez will be here.
What do you make of Rambo?
He's intriguing. I mean, he didn't have good numbers at Oklahoma, but man,
he had solid number. They weren't bad either. He was the second leading receiver the year Jalen was there.
He was 43 for 743.
That team had CeeDee Lamb. So.
Yeah, and then the COVID year, 25 for 312. But I mean, I guess what I'm saying is that when he got to Miami 2 years ago, he really blossomed. Had almost 1,200 yards, 80 catches, 7 touchdowns, and averaged 14.8 per catch. Didn't run well at the combine. Didn't get drafted. Whose camp was he in last year?
Carolina, I believe.
Yeah. So
XFL, went to the XFL. Didn't have a ton of success in the XFL. Yeah. He was the 10th leading receiver in the entire league, but you would think a guy who's now in the NFL would maybe have a better showing.
You never know.
Hakeem Butler, by the way, just signed with the Steelers. He was really good in the XFL.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, it's so different. You never know, who the quarterback, his coaches, all that stuff. He's got good size, 6'1", 185. Didn't run well at the combine. What do we say, 4'5", 9 or something? But we'll see. You bring him in and take a long look at him. It's a position where, I think there's a chance to make the team.
Now the problem with trading Quez is you would go into a season with A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Olamide Zaccheaus.
Yeah.
Britton Covey?
Well,
and one of these guys. Then you're entering a territory where if you have an injury to one of your top receivers, you're in trouble.
Well, yeah. But if you have an injury to Devontae or AJ, you're in trouble anyway.
Yeah, but at least you have a guy who's played.
And Zaccheaus is, I consider him an established NFL pro.
But he's a slot only. I don't want to limit him, but he's primarily played the slot.
Sure.
Whereas Quez, if he's around, I guess he could be your backup.
Yeah.
X or Z.
Yeah, I think if you do trade Quez, you would want another veteran in here.
Yeah, I think you would almost need it unless one of these other guys at camp, whether it's Zangaro or.
And don't forget, I mean, there's a reason they've kept Greg Ward around here, and like I mean, he can play the slot. He can, he's a functional pro.
I like Greg Ward, but that can't. I mean, I don't know if you can factor that into it.
Well, I mean, you're talking about your fifth receiver, fourth receiver. And I mean, is Britton Covey a lock to be here? I mean, if you can get a receiver who has return skills.
Yeah, he's not a lock. I think he has to be in the lead for a roster spot right now, just looking at what they have.
But if you have a chance to get somebody who has punt return skill, and can catch the football, I mean, it'll be interesting to see if Covey even gets any targets in camp.
I was a little surprised they didn't draft a receiver.
Yeah, I was too.
It's a position where you can always add. You go heavy on it, and it's Nick's position, right? Like his background is in receiver, and they have one of the best duos in the league. And after that, there's a drop off, which every team has that. But
I think the Zacchaeus signing was huge. I mean, I think he has a chance to be a really solid guy.
Okay, what do you make of them not bringing Zach Pascal back there?
I'm okay with it.
I was a little surprised, honestly, because he's just Nick's guy. It wouldn't have cost much. They clearly wanted to move on. You can afford to pay him.
Yeah.
Unless he wanted to move on and maybe get more opportunity, because he did take a step back in terms of target share.
Yeah. I thought he'd be more involved in the passing game. It's hard to tell exactly why he wasn't.
Well, won football.
Yeah, I know, but I would expect Zacchaeus to make more of an impact than Pascal did. I think they probably expected more from Pascal.
You think so?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one.
Gannon loved him.
Apparently.
Snagged him right on up.
Yeah. Team's looking up.
I heard he was talking to him week 14 about signing with Arizona.
Zach Pascal, Coach, you got to get back to game planning for the divisional round.
Semifinal.
Tight end. I have the same three who were here last year: Dallas Goedert, Jack Stoll, Grant Calcaterra, which would leave out Dan Arnold, Tyree Jackson, Dalton Keaton, and Brady Russell.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine Dan Arnold. I mean, he's the one guy I feel like the Tyree Jackson experiment has run its course. Dan Arnold, I just don't see the fit with zero blocking ability.
I mean, he could be your three. Like he could compete with Grant Calcaterra for that third job.
Yeah, I mean
But if they're close, you would think they'd keep Grant.
I can't imagine. They won't. So I feel pretty strongly to be those three.
What do you make of Tyree Jackson at this point? Is it completely over? Do you try to keep him around and keep developing him? There's something there.
I mean, he looks like a beast. He caught the ball well when we saw him in camp before he got hurt. I find it hard to imagine he'll, at this point,
still just 25.
Yeah, we'll see. I'd be surprised if he makes an impact.
Practice squad?
Sure.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah. A lot of these guys who get cut end up on the practice squad now anyway.
You invested a lot of time and coaching into them.
And you get 16 spots.
Yeah. Plus
Matt Leo. So you might as well use them.
They're gonna get like a plaque, like a permanent plaque over Matt Leo's locker.
Offensive line. This is a little trickier. I have them keeping 9. Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson, Jason Kelce, Cam Jurgens, Lane Johnston, Tyler Steen, Jack Driscoll, Brett Toth, Sua Opeta.
Am
I keeping you up here?
I mean, I guess one question is 9 or 10.
And that's a valid question.
If it's 10.
One year they kept 8, and we were like, what the heck are they doing keeping 8 offensive linemen?
Yeah. The 9 that you listed, I mean, Brett Toth is the one guy that you just wonder, how long he gets. But
talk about putting a lot of time into someone.
Yeah, based on what they have right now, it makes sense.
I should mention Josh Sills is still on the the commissioner exempt list, so he doesn't count for any of this stuff.
Yeah, and there's no reason to count him.
Yeah.
Trevor Reed is a guy that you like.
Yeah, it's not necessarily that I like Trevor Reed because I haven't gotten my eyes on him yet, but I like the idea of Trevor Reed because we know that they've had a good success rate of keeping undrafted players on the roster. It doesn't mean those undrafted players go on to be stars. That hasn't really happened. But like Suopeta, Josh Sills, last year they kept. A few years ago it was who was the LSU kid? Oh my goodness, I can see him. He was a former tight end. Do you know who I mean?
Yeah, but I can't think of his name.
I'll look it up. It's gonna drive me. Dylan Gordon got kicked off the team,
right?
But he was another one. So like they had this history of finding guys, like even Brett Toth they found and they developed him. So
yeah,
Trevor Reed is one of the guys I'll be watching in training camp like a psycho. I'm going to be watching this undrafted offensive lineman from Louisville.
I think Stout loves those guys. I think for starters,
and he's super athletic. Like he's the type of guy. Stout. He reminds me of Sua in a way. Like just unrefined but raw athleticism that he can mold a little bit.
Yeah, it's a Stoutland special.
And then there's like the Johnsons, Roderick and Fred, who are enormous. Tyrese Robinson, who's enormous,
huge.
So there are other guys, but they all might be fighting for a spot that doesn't exist.
True, but practice squad, they'll keep like four O linemen on the practice squad.
They normally do.
Yeah.
Any changes you'd make to that?
No, honestly, no.
He'd go 9.
Brett Toth is the only guy, but like
I think they like Brett Toth because he does give them some guard and tackle flexibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, unless like Trevor Reed does enough to win him over.
Okay, let's flip the defense.
Yeah.
Defensive tackle went heavy here with 6, which admittedly probably won't happen, but Fletcher Cox, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Milton Williams, Marlon Tuipulotu, Moro Ajomo. So Contavious Street and Noah Ellis out. Contavious Street was a free agent, but if it comes down to him or Ajomo, maybe they keep the draft pick.
Yeah. I'm not convinced Tuipulotu will be here. Yeah, so
the top 4 locks.
Yeah, and I'm going to keep Jomo.
So you'd maybe go 5 and my Marlon's out.
Yeah.
Now the reason I kept Marlon was because I think you're going to need to like find some way to have some nose tackle reps in this group, and like Ajomo's probably not giving you that.
No.
That's a tricky thing because last year they really rotated between Jordan Davis and Linval Joseph. So I don't know who's spelling Jordan Davis. And there aren't a ton of those reps, but something to think about.
Yeah, and Linval, I got him here like week 9.
Wouldn't shock me. And Marlon's a guy who didn't play very well last year, but they played him a lot.
They did.
Played him more than I thought they'd play.
He was playing like 25 snaps, 30 snaps a game before he
got
hurt.
I'm thinking maybe there's a disconnect with how we view him and how they view him.
Could be.
Yeah.
Could be.
I don't think he was bad. He just
new defensive coaching staff too, so we'll see.
Not at that position though. That's still Tracy Rocker.
Yeah, new coordinator, but I don't think Marlon will be on the roster. I'll say that.
Okay, so you got 5 there.
Yeah.
Edge 6, and I just included all edge here. I used to split them up, but I'm just throwing them all in a bunch. They're in the same meeting room. That's good enough for me. Hassan Reddick, Josh Sweat, Brandon Graham, Nolan Smith, Patrick Johnson, Janarius Robinson.
Oh, a little upset.
Yeah, a little upset. So I have Derek Barnett off here. I don't know how he factors into their plans. He'd be their 5th pass rusher.
I'm going to keep him.
Are you?
I'm going to keep him and Kyron over Patrick and Janarius.
Oh, interesting. Why Kyron over Patrick?
Special teams. I think
Patrick does that though.
I think they like Kyron more in special teams, just by impression.
He benched him at the end of last year.
Other than that, I think Derek Barnett's going to make the team.
Yeah, I have a weird feeling about him that he's going to be a post June 1st move, whether that's a release or maybe a trade for a late round pick, because he really would be the 5th edge rusher. And I guess there are worse things than keeping him around for that, but it's going to be hard to find him snaps.
You're also, I mean, BG at his age, who knows?
I guess there's some projection with Nolan Smith.
He gets banged up. Nolan Smith, we haven't seen. You would expect him to be a regular part of that rotation. Certainly Barnett would be, he'd be the best 5th edge rusher in the league.
Fair. He's still just 26.
Yeah, that's crazy, isn't it?
He was really young when he got in the league. He turns 27 in June, but right now he's still 26.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And at least now we have to see him come back from the injury, but he's like an average run of the mill depth defensive end at this point.
Yeah, which isn't the worst thing to have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Linebacker. Rough list here.
Yeah.
I have 4: Nakobe Dean, Nicholas Morrow, Sean Bradley, Christian Ellis, Davion Taylor, and Ben Van Sumeren out. But this is the one position where I'm like, I'm doing this, but I don't think they're done.
They can't be done, right?
It's a rough list.
First of all, I don't think Morrow's going to be here. I'm going to cut Morrow. I think there'll be a lot of activity here.
Yeah, I can see that.
Has to be.
The only lock there is Nakobe Dean.
Yeah. But I like that you have Christian Ellis on there.
You gave them something last year.
Yeah, he's one guy I really want to see in camp. See if he can.
Are you completely done with the Davion Taylor experiment?
No.
Neither am I.
No.
Yeah.
He was a 3rd round pick. I would even have him on the team ahead of Morrow.
Really?
Van Sumeren is such an interesting guy. It's hard to imagine he'd be ready. I think he'll be on a practice squad for sure. But I could, if he can pick things up, which at that position is unlikely.
Tough, yeah.
But maybe next year he might be. But, Sean Bradley, did he play a defensive rep last year? I don't think he did. I think he played some 2 years ago.
He could have got on the field when their linebackers were awful.
Yeah. It's a tough group right here. And Nakobe, who I feel is going to be pretty good, he's an unknown. He's an unknown right now.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I like Davion. At least you're going to get – he's athletic. He can run. He's limited. But I feel like he's got more experience than – Morrow's got experience, but I don't think he'll be here. But I think Davion is going to be in that mix.
It was still just such a shame that Davion got hurt in 21 because he was starting to show you a little something. Then he gets hurt, and he those reps would have been so valuable for him.
Yeah.
And then he needed on-field time, and now he's never going to get it. And it's like this team is a Super Bowl team. They can't be giving reps to in a perfect world, Davion would just be on a bad team and get to play. For him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wouldn't help the Eagles any.
Is Sean Bradley, he was a 6th round pick. Is he a good enough special teamer to, if he's not going to help you on defense, to keep him around? I don't know.
Linebacker, yeah. Because you typically, that's where you put your special teamers.
Yeah.
And they did it last year. He was on the team, didn't play defense.
Right.
Same with Christian Ellis.
But they had better linebackers.
True.
So,
but you still need to add those better linebackers.
Yeah, well, I think they will.
Yeah.
A lot of questions to be answered there.
Cornerback. I kept 6. Darius Slay, James Bradberry, Vontae Maddox, Zach McPherson, Keely Ringo, Greedy Williams.
Yeah. Josiah Scotts and Josh Jobe are guys that, they seem to really like Josh Jobe, but I don't know where he would fit in.
I don't think Greedy is a slam dunk make the team.
No, that's probably true.
The other ones I feel pretty confident about.
Yeah. McPherson is a 4th round pick going into his 3rd year, so wouldn't say he's a lock, but I'd be surprised if he's not here. and new secondary coach.
Who was here before?
Yeah. Eli Ricks, guy who probably, earmarked for the practice squad. Josiah Scott gives you nickel ability.
And some safety. Certainly didn't perform at a very high level last year when he was asked to.
He did pick off Aaron Rodgers, I believe.
He did. So maybe for that Jets game, you bring him up.
Yeah. So Slay, Bradberry, Maddox, Ringo are locks. And then we'll see. I don't think Zach McPherson's going to make the team.
Really?
Yeah.
Why is that?
I don't know. Just a hunch. Okay. I wonder if they
I want to write all these hunches down.
Well, you can just watch the podcast.
I wouldn't do that.
I wonder if they like Josh Jobe more. You always hear people mentioning Josh Jobe. You never hear anyone like didn't Bradberry bring him up today? Bradberry's talking about how much he likes Reed Blankenship and Josh Jobe.
Yeah.
I don't know. You just hear his name.
Okay.
So maybe there's something there. I mean, McPherson hasn't done anything to make me not think he'll be any good, but he hasn't, we just haven't seen a whole lot of him. 2 years ago, we saw more of him.
I've seen more of him than Josh Jobe.
Yeah. No, I'm going by what I hear, and people, you just hear his name come up a lot.
Okay. Safety. Reed Blankenship, Terrell Edmonds, Sidney Brown, Kayvon Wallace.
Yeah, unless you think Justin Evans might stick, which
not crazy.
Not crazy.
Could be him and Kayvon fighting for that last job.
Yeah, and I don't think Edmonds is a lock. I think Brown and Blankenship are the locks, and see who makes the team.
Could you say this is also a spot where they could add. It's not crazy to think because they have 3 guys who could be starters, but none of those guys are like great players.
No, I think it's pretty clear that Reed's going to be a starter, but it's hard to imagine him coming out and having a bad training camp, but it's possible. I want to see a long look at Sidney Brown. Kayvon played better last year. Sometimes he makes you think like maybe he'll be okay. You have him making the team. I like that. I'm going to agree with that.
I mean, he's been on the team, and the position isn't very good right now. So yeah, it's hard to take him off.
Yeah. So who do you think the starter? I'm going to go Sidney Brown and Reed.
That's where I'm leaning.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, if Sidney's not ready, then you have Terrell Edmonds waiting.
Sure.
Specialists, Jake Elliott and Rick Lovato are obviously on the team. Right now I have Sipos ahead of Ty Zettner, just because I haven't seen Zettner yet.
Have you seen Sipos?
I have.
I'm going Detmer. I'm going Jake Elliott, Rick Lovato, and Ty Detmer.
Okay. Do you really think Zettner's going to make the team over?
Yes.
Do you? Okay. Yeah. It's just tough because
it's very tough.
I want to see that play out a little bit. So I kind of just deferred to the guy who's here, and I know they like enough to keep him around for 2 years.
Yeah.
But certainly not a crazy thought to think that Sipos could be on his way out. That would make fans very happy.
It would make Ty Zettner's family very happy.
But the
Denver.
Grass is not always greener.
No.
Yeah. We've seen that
before.
Grass
is not always Zettner.
Yeah. All right. We good?
I'm good. Yeah.
All right. That's it, everyone. Thank you. If you like this podcast for some reason, please do us a favor, rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, please click the like button and subscribe there as well. Enjoy your weekends. I think we have some nice weather on the horizon.
Saturday looks rainy, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah? That's not good.
BCSL meet. Yeah, it looks pretty rainy.
That's not good. Well, we need if you can take care of that, get that rain out of the forecast for me, I'd appreciate it.
Work on that.
All right. For Reuben, I'm Dave. This has been Eagle Eye. We'll talk to you soon.